Well, welcome everybody. I am absolutely thrilled today. We have two incredibly special guests who have written this amazing book called Out of the Box. If you don't know, but Madonna and Beck, you are in for a treat today. Now, I was trying to think, how do I introduce this book? And to tell you the truth, I read the back of it, and this is exactly how I felt after reading the book. It says, help the neurodivergent children in your life thrive with this must-read book. And I couldn't agree more. The reason it makes it a must-read book for me, and can I share, I read it really fast the first time, and then I've been going back and diving in. So I'd recommend readers and listeners, just grab it, have it on your shelf, and do it once through really fast, and then have it as your reference to go back to. So that's how I'm using it. But I tell you why it's a must-read book. There's so much stuff out there now. It can be overwhelming for families, parents, teachers. And what I love, this is actually an evidence-based book. They've actually surveyed and interviewed over 2,000 Australians. And that's what makes this unique and such an important book. I'm getting a bit teary because I feel like this is the book I wished I had when I was in the classroom. And I'm sure for many parents, this is the book they need now on their journey. So I am absolutely thrilled that Madonna King and Rebecca Sparrow are joining me to share not just about this beautiful, amazing book, but also give us some insights and understanding. So welcome, ladies.
Thank you, Sue. And to correct you, yes, we did the 2,000 people, but we also then went to experts like you. And I think part of the reason it's good because teachers everywhere were telling us what you had taught them. So for us to be able to tap into your mind and others like you just was an incredible benefit for us, but also the people who read the book.
Oh, I really, really appreciate that. And I think that's what shines through in the book. It's not just one person's opinion. And, I always say to know someone with autism is to know someone with autism. And I think the fact you've gathered so much information, which I know, Madonna, you're known for in all your publications, but you've brought this together so well. And I can't imagine how much data you had because I know we spoke for like half an hour and you got all that. And I wasn't sure, to tell you the truth, when I spoke to you, I'm like, how are they going to pull this together? But it's so practical and easy to read. And I love all the little quotes you've got, like no RSVPs from kids to his birthday party and no invitation to any others. Those little things that when you're flicking through, I resonate with that, And this is why people need this honest. It's a really honest book. Does that?
Yeah.
It is, Sue, and I think that, I come from a large neurodivergent family, and this is certainly the book that I wish somebody had given me when one of my children was in grade 1 and a teacher sort of flagged with me about getting my child tested, and it is overwhelming. And so what happens is the great thing about the internet is there's so much information. The bad thing about the internet is that there's so much information. The quality of the information is not always great. There's conflicting advice. It is overwhelming. And as a parent, for me, I felt like I was taking breadcrumbs everywhere, running into you've got a neurodivergent child. Who do you see? What do you use? And that's how I found out about you, Sue. So again, one of the first things that helped me that I got from you, this is years ago, was having one of those countdown timers.
Yeah.
Right? So immediately, game changer. And I thought, because you explained things. And I thought, it's not just my family where time, countdowns are an issue. And so those little things help. But we really wanted to put all of the best advice in one place because it is overwhelming as a parent. You're dealing with all the emotions in your household anyway, let alone having to work hard to get the advice. So I just think that this book, and as Madonna will say to you, we know that it is taking people years to get a diagnosis. We know that there are long waiting lists and people in regional areas having to drive for hours. To be able to have great advice in a book, I think is critical for helping so many families who are out there who are struggling and overwhelmed.
But what's amazing about this book, it's not just the parents. teachers are feeling overwhelmed too. Teachers are being told, oh, you've got 5 neurodivergent children in your class this year. And I can tell you at uni, you learn what is autism, what is ADHD, not what to do,
And you said, I think, teachers are calling out for time, resources and support. But when we surveyed teachers, that routinely they would say up to 40% of their class was learnt in a different way, were neurodivergent. And in specialist classes in high school, that can be a lot more. Can a teacher do that effectively? And our teachers have hearts of gold almost exclusively. So what we found is they're going and paying for a master's course or this course or this to try and learn, going onto your website and trying to find what they can do. And at the end of the day, that is wrong, Sue. It is wrong that people have not had professional development for 15 years, or they overheard someone in the staff room say something about neurodivergent. Is that the right word? These are people who we entrust with our children. They're calling out for help and their help is not there. And that is a systemic problem as much as anything else, particularly when and as Beck is known to say over and over and over, there's little adjustments that cost nothing that can lift a whole class. So why don't we do it?
And I think, I'll just jump in here because I think that one of the brilliant things about this book, and I know that we wrote it, but I'm going to say this because I'm so proud of this book, is I feel as well we have created a bridge between parents and teachers for the teachers to say, this is what we need. We're on your side. This is what we need for this to work. And also parents to say, this is what we need, and this is what's working. And so I think because what we know is the most successful cases for children are when a school and a parent are working together. And that is our goal, is to bring everybody together with the best tips of how can we support our kids and make it work for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. So on that, can you share, because I'm sure people are going, well, tell me, what can we do? So can you share what are some of those things we can be doing?
Do you want me to start off, Madonna?
Yeah, you go. Go, Ben.
Okay. Well, definitely this certainly came through, but I'm just going to go through really practical things. So the start of a school year, often the teachers are at school the week before school kicks off. So, at my kids' school and many schools, great teachers, the neurodivergent kids or other kids who might have real anxiety about school go in that week. I had one teacher one year say, your child can come in every day. They can come in every day for half an hour or whatever they need and just hang out in my classroom while I'm working and setting things up so they can get used to the space. That's a big one. And also getting to know the grounds of the school. What we as well that we know that you would know, Sue, is relationships are everything. So when you do up one of those forms of about my child, what their interests are, whether it's Pokemon or Dungeons and Dragons or a rugby league team or Harry Potter, and the teacher knows that and can be equipped with having those conversations to build that foundation of connection. That's a big one. Then there's other little things like, my kids have got their swimming carnival this week. Now, in the past when they were younger, the teacher would highly prepare them for that and say, you know what, if you don't want to get changed, if it's a struggle with motor skills with getting changed, we're going to let you wear your swimming uniform under your swimming clothes under your uniform. So you just have to get there and rip off the PE uniform. Does that make sense? There's lots of little, and I haven't even gone into the classroom.
No,
but there's some little ones.
What you're saying, Beck, what you're saying is what Madonna was saying. They're actually small adjustments that can help lots of children. Like none of it, like a child wearing their swimmers underneath. For teenagers, do you remember the change rooms, how awkward they were? I think there's a lot of teenagers that would prefer that. So I think these little adjustments, and it's funny you saying that about me because I have just emailed that out to everybody who gets my e-zine, like here, get the children to fill this in or help them fill it in for next year, because often that's the bridge between last year's teacher and this year's teacher. And I couldn't agree more. Like just having that up front. Teachers haven't got time for a massive big document. They just need those this kid loves Pokemon, Minecraft.
That's enough usually. Get them into one of my kids. It's a rugby league team. Get them into a conversation about that team. You've won them over. Do you know what I mean? It sets a feeling of safety and a connection that gets you off on the right foot.
And, Beck mentioned that connection word, just even having movement breaks in the class, that lifts everyone. But finding how you connect with a student. So you may not put them on the spot. You may let them email you an assignment or when they're ready to get up and speak. And, we spoke to so many people in this book, but one is Pip Williams, world-renowned author from Australia, author of the Dictionary of Lost Words. She is dyslexic and she was failing school dreadfully until one clever teacher thought, hold on, when you write the answers, you fail, but when you talk to me, you star. Answer these questions. And when she did and got almost 100%, they then decided, all right, that's how we're going to examine you and look at her fly. And her appeal to us was, if you're a teacher, even if you're a parent and a child writes, let's say a Father's Day card, don't just immediately correct the grammar. Look at the idea. Look at the creativity. Because she said, if you're banged on the head enough and you're too scared to actually write what you think because you don't have the full stop or the capital in the right place, it just destroys your confidence. And then there's little things like letting parents know that there's going to be a fire alarm the next day. Having a school competition on what the fire alarm should even be. Just there's a whole lot of things I think, and our teachers, I'm sure it sounds overwhelming in many places, and there's lots of other bigger things schools can do. But that one teacher, we've all got a teacher who changed our lives. We've got that one teacher, I'm sure you do too, Sue, that actually changed our lives. For every one of our children, there is a teacher who can do that. And
Madonna, I agree. And I absolutely had that teacher, but I also had a student who changed my life. And I think that is underestimated, that there are teachers who have had students who make them a better teacher.
Well, there's one story in the book that a parent says of a teacher who wrote a thank you card to a neurodivergent child just saying what you've taught me this year. And that child carries that as a badge of honor. Imagine writing 4 sentences and knowing that just helps a child going forward. I mean, that makes me want to cry. Really.
Me too. I'm getting teary here because I'm thinking about the students that have changed my life. And
I just want to jump in here for a second and say something else that's on my mind related to this, which is I think a lot of parents, neurotypical kids, can get very caught up in what accommodations neurodivergent children need. And what I want to say is, for the vast majority of neurodivergent children, those accommodations are very small but powerful and benefit the whole class. What is a bigger issue, and we won't go down this track, but I just want to put this into the minds of people listening, is, be less concerned. I'd say to parents, be less concerned about the accommodations that are needed for neurodivergent children and a bit more concerned about the bullying. Right? Because the neurodivergent children and other children in marginalised groups are the ones who are absolutely hammered the most. And I would let's put things in perspective here of, as I said, the majority of neurodivergent children, the accommodations usually work for everybody. And they're often so small, and yet make an enormous difference to those kids in that classroom.
Yeah. And I think, I always say autism spectrum and ADHD, they're not a disability, they're a diffability. And I think if we get our head, it's a different way of thinking and learning. It's not, and as a result, people often don't see those subtle little things. But going back to what Madonna was saying about putting on the bathers before, what I would say, it's easier to be proactive than reactive. So if teachers don't have these little adjustments in place and the kid has a big meltdown at the sports carnival, actually that's going to take the teacher away from 30 other learners. Yeah. We put those little accommodations in front, have that clock in, invite the students in before, all of the things you've both been talking about. They're the proactive strategies, having the time. And you know what? Other kids might access that. But what I know, we end up with this behaviour if we don't put those things in place.
Yes.
Child's distressed. So why not put it in place earlier? To me, it's like, I'm going to go to the airport an hour early. Doesn't impact on anyone else in my life, but I get there an hour early, right? Sometimes we've got to put those earlier strategies in rather than getting to the reactive. And this is, I think, what features are burnt out.
Invisible scaffolding is what we call it.
And we've got lists and lists of them, as you know, in the book that teachers actually do. But one of them is just like simple instructions, one instruction at a time. Well, that every child in the class is going to benefit, as every parent knows. But, just on Beck's point of valuing difference, what broke my heart is what some children go through, but also how some parents lead that bad behavior, Sue. If there is one child who doesn't come to your child's birthday party because little Patrick's a bit different, little Patrick's a bit difficult, we're not sure he's a really good influence on you, what does every other child learn there? And you look at the world around us, and the hate and the war and the way that we've had to have legislation put in so that we don't discriminate against something, where we could actually be teaching children the value of difference. And indeed, we go into detail on how one child in the class, a neurotypical child who values difference, can actually change the trajectory of a neurodivergent child next to them. And I'm sure it's the other way around too, but it's just that ability to understand that everyone is different, everyone has a place, everyone learns differently, and let's let everyone rise.
I really hope you are enjoying this conversation with Madonna and Beck. I forgot to say the name of the book is Out of the Box, and I really think it's a fantastic book that you should all consider getting. Give the gift of understanding this year and get this book for families, friends, teachers, grandparents. I think it's going to make a difference. I mean, it's so evidence-based, and I think that's what makes a huge difference to me. I call myself a pracademic, which is a practical academic. And as you know, a lot of the strategies they're sharing, you've heard from me before. But I love the fact they've gathered this from so many people, over 2,000, to create this amazing resource for you to have as an ongoing reference. If you don't know my website, it's suelaki.com.au, and you can find the book there along with lots of other resources to make a difference. And if you go to the podcast, you'll see like my top takeaways. So if you're the sort of person that likes a visual or the tips, I always try and make it easier for you as a time saver. So make sure you jump on the podcast or blog page and you'll get like my summary of what I took away from this conversation. And look, I just want to wish you all a very happy end of year. If you're listening to this at the end of the year, absolutely, Madonna. And what my doctorate research found is exactly what you're talking about. We actually underestimate how amazing the peers can be if we empower them and help them understand that, rather than, I mean, I hate to say it, I feel like neurodiversity is kept in the closet. I think, that we should be embracing that. And, it's so often, and I'd love, Beck, your experience of sharing diagnosis, but it saddens me. It has to be a conscious, like, are we going to share? Aren't we? Like, doesn't that sound a little bit like religion, LGBTQI in the past? Doesn't that sound a little bit similar sort of trajectory?
I think that there's still, I think for parents, they can bring shame, their own feelings of shame. They are concerned. They're worried about labels. They're thinking, well, I mean, we know. I was asked by a school the other day, well, how many neurodivergent children do we have here? And I said, well, I would say per classroom, you're looking at least, for any school, 20%. And they were going, well, that's not how many we would have on our books. And that's because parents aren't getting the kids diagnosed, or they're not revealing to you. But it's playing out in the classroom. It's playing out in friendships. Make no mistake, with or without a label or a diagnosis, it is playing out in how that child feels about themselves, how they live their lives, how they connect with others, whether or not they get support. I would dearly love to see more parents feeling comfortable to, well, I know getting a diagnosis is very difficult, but feel comfortable about accepting and talking about whether their children are diagnosed, because it does still feel like a dirty word. So it with the stigma still.
And when I talk to parents, Beck, it's not just the dirty word, it's advice. People are like, oh, well, have you tried this, that, or the other, right? Now, if I said to you I was a different religion, would you say to me, have you tried?
Have you done this green smoothie?
Yeah. Do you know what, like, does that sound, I know it might sound a bit extreme, but I feel like parents are feeling vulnerable when they share. And then people give them random advice, like tell their uncle or an auntie.
Yeah. Or they don't believe it. Oh, yes, that's a bit of a trend right now. But one guest, Christy Forbes, who said to us that if you don't put a label of ADHD or autistic or something else on your child who needs that label, they will wear another label. And we've seen in the Australian school system where that is badly behaved, naughty, weird, all those.
Too much. In French, French, it's not too much.
So I stand being in that space. And part of that also, according to experts, is in Tony Attwood's words, the apple doesn't always fall far from the tree. So a diagnosis of a child then leads to a discussion, well, this is on your side of the family, not mine. And rather than thinking, it's our child, we need to really, but I'm a little bit more hopeful than what you two just said, in the sense that I think we are riding a wave. We're surfers. We've just caught that wave. And in the same way we did with affirmative action and the LGBTIQ community, all of that, it is now the time for neurodivergent. And I hope our book adds to that. But I do see an enormous amount of hope and a determination of people to love it.
Absolutely. And it's funny, Madonna, I was about to say, I think your book is going to help that tide turn because it's so well researched. And I think, you know, every school should have this in their parent library. But what I would love is neurotypical parents read it, not just our neurodivergent. Like, I think this should be like, that's my research says that is what we need to change. We need to change the conversation with the parents of the neurotypical children and get them on board so that if their child says, oh, he's weird, well, let's have a conversation about calling people weird. Like, actually changing that. I mean, it sounds terrible, but going on what you're saying, you know, a bit like in the old days when you called someone gay. Well, we've changed that narrative. Let's change the narrative around freaks, geeks, weird. Like, let's change that.
I think that's right with neurotypical people on board. Absolutely agree. The other thing I think is I'm a political journalist mainly, and it was when politicians came out and said, I'm taking time off for depression, or I am seeking mental health leave, CEOs as well, that all of a sudden everyone thought, oh, that's brave. Next, we saw policies and legislation to not only to verify, to mandate that when someone felt like that. And I think if there is someone listening to your podcast, a school principal, teachers we found who are neurodivergent were better teachers to the whole class. Parents said that over and over. And so if you are neurodivergent and you're a medico, you're an OT, you're an educator, you're a politician, you're a policymaker, if you can say that out loud, you will help change the mind of a parent listening and a child.
Absolutely. And my mind was just jumping, sorry to jump in there, but really Tim Fisher, and Judy Fisher sharing their, she's Judy Brewer, but whatever. But them, I mean, that's what brought Infaxia in the beginning. We wouldn't have had funding for autism without Tim and Judy sharing Harrison's journey and WET. And so we need more politicians to get diagnosed. Maybe that's what we should be throwing some money at.
Yeah. South Australia now have a minister for autism.
Yes.
You know, I think South Australia has a lot of things that the rest of the states can learn from, even the way they are putting it into university courses and the like. And that doesn't help maybe older teachers who have gone through that system. But we have to have a way of giving teachers all the information to support them, to support our children.
Absolutely, because I always say teachers can't support children unless they're supported. So if you had a magic wand, Madonna, how would you support our teachers? What would you say to the teachers listening that you learnt from researching this book that they need?
I would say that professional teacher organisations and unions, of which most of our teachers are part, should be looking at professional development for neurodivergencies. Teachers want it. They shouldn't have to pay for it. And they shouldn't have to do it outside hours. I think for our schools to allow an OT to come in during school hours, or a speech pathologist, so you're not dragging a tired 8-year-old at 7:00 at night to an health appointment. I think for our education system to sit down and think, what would make our school match the inclusive banner we have that the children walk under each morning. And if they did that, we would not be spending millions of dollars every bloody year on a review of our education system. We wouldn't be looking at our NAPLAN results and wringing our wrists about what we're doing wrong. We wouldn't be changing the curriculum every few years because we would have engagement. And I think this is the secret sauce. Our neurodivergent students are the secret sauce to Australia flourishing in education. And Jason Clare has been quite a good education minister. And, I've sent him 2 copies now. I've got no record that he's received them. He'll get a 3rd in the next week. I have this idea. But if we got our leader like the education minister to read this book and then to say, hold on, we're spending millions over here. We could spend half that here, and all of a sudden, we might have a different education system.
I love it. And Madonna, I'm putting out there that he puts this book in every school. I mean, it's not like me to say this, but I feel like if every school had this on hand, I think they'd get a lot of reassurance, because it's not all problems in this book. It's lots of tips and strategies. And I know we've talked a little bit more about the issues, but I think a lot of schools would pick this up and go, we're doing this, and here's a little tweak we can add, or here's what else we can do. And I think I'm with you. I think I should be more hopeful about.
And I think, there are lists and lists of things that teachers do. And I know this is a big thing, but, this made me cry over and over. One teacher whose student was obsessed with trains used trains to teach their children, the whole class, things from velocity to numbers to carriages to transport systems. But then she took the little boy down to a train station who recorded his voice saying the train is approaching or whatever. And the whole class went down there to celebrate that. Now, I know you can't do that for every child, but that teacher is the type of person who should be in our award lists each year.
Yeah.
Name is never known, but who will almost definitely change the career, the pathway of that little boy who got to record his voice.
And the class, Madonna. And in that class, watching her set the tone of inclusivity. And as you said, schools are very quick to put on their websites and in their glossy brochures how inclusive they are. Well, I really want to see schools making sure that they are walking the talk.
Yeah. And I always say, when parents go and visit a school, don't look at the year 7s or the preps. Go look at the year 5 and 6s.
Yeah.
Look at the year 11 and 12s. Like, don't look like that entry is going to look all lovely and pretty, but how do the kids look like at the end? Don't look at the beginning.
Yeah. So crucial.
And it's like,
that advice you gave us, and we put it in the book.
Did you? I have to tell you, I was a little bit cringy seeing my own name in the book. I was like, I even said to my husband, it says Sue Larkey said that. And I was thinking, who is that?
Yeah.
I was talking to an educator recently. This is just a fluke. But they said, how odd is this? This parent is wrong, wants to send the child here, but doesn't want to go to prep, wants to go and talk to the year 5s. And I just read, so such, yeah. But you are spot how they're talking, if they're in little groups, if they're saying hello to the teacher, if they're talking to each other, because an enormous effort is put in prep and year 1, particularly when they know the stream of teachers are walking in, a stream of parents, prospective parents are walking in. I thought that was a great tip.
And Joan, look how the children are engaging in year 5 and 6 in the playground. I mean, I say to parents, don't go on the open day. Just go and look in the playground. See, are there children wandering around on their own? Well, let's just say, yeah. So I love all this, ladies. This is just amazing. We had so many things I wanted to cover, but I've just wanted to go back here because I think this is one on what we're just talking about. How important is the principal in the school? What did you find? Like when parents are going through that choosing the school, and what did you find in your evidence?
That tone comes from the top. A neurodivergent principal has a whole different way of thinking. I think a neurodivergent educator should be paid more because they bring a lived experience that actually helps everyone. And I only say that half joking. But there was one case where a principal pulled out a picture of a meth addict and said to a young boy, "This is your future unless you change your behavior." Pray tell how that would help the child. The level of suspensions, where one child has had 27 suspensions and is in year 7. Another child hasn't been to school for 18 months because it's suspension after suspension. If it doesn't work the first time or the second time, I guarantee you it won't work the third or the fourth time. And it's also setting parents against the school because they've got to then give up their job or take long service leave to look after their child who is routinely suspended. A principal can change all of that by being strategic and thinking, how do we help our teachers to help our students? That in turn will help parents who have to remember that they need to be respectful in their advocacy for teachers. As you said, Sue, you can't send a huge document this thick, but that idea of being respectful and respecting the teacher's enormous skills and abilities, and the teacher respecting that parent wants one thing. You don't contact the teacher unless you're really worried about your kid and you want the best out of them. If each could see that, I think it would be fabulous. And the principle in that equation is absolutely fundamental.
Yeah, 100%. Do you want to add anything to that, Beck?
No, I think that what Madonna said is exactly right. And I think as well with schools, I say to parents as well, go and subscribe to the school newsletter, because that's where the principal's letter brings up what issues, what's the problems are going on in school, what he wants parents to know. And also just go and look at what the school values in terms of, is it all about the sporting superstars? And I don't know, there's a tone that is set about what a school prioritizes over perhaps, and they're not mutually exclusive, but kindness and integrity and being service-minded. And I just think, and the last thing that I would say with parents is, because schools will promise all kinds of things, but when you walk into a school, pay attention to that feeling that you get. If it's a lonely feeling, schools can look great on paper. They can, but when you walk in, and if you get a sense, this doesn't feel right for my child, listen to that feeling, because the school's got to also match with a family, how your family is, your values, the type of people that you are, if you've got that luxury of that choice. And I think all of that needs to be considered.
Yeah, and I say to parents, trust your gut. If you need to move, move. If I don't like my dentist, I move. And as you say, if you have the luxury of choice, some of my families in regional Australia have absolutely no choice. And I always say pro-choice as far as schools. Like, some children might need a specialist classroom, some might need we need a variety of choices for families. And in my vision, that's what the Minister for Education would offer, that neurodivergent families have the same choices that I have as a neurotypical parent, as far as different systems, different types of settings, and be able to move if that's not right. Whereas a lot of my families are locked in or on waiting lists, which is a disgrace. How can we have a waiting list for a autism classroom?
Yeah.
But I don't know. I feel like we're Australia. We should be able to afford to fund whatever options parents want in education. And, to move forward, we have to have that eclectic funded approach.
And I think as well, Sue, just going back to the principles, I think as well, can we just because things have always been done a certain way doesn't mean they have to continue that way. And having, as Madonna said, having principles that are able to think outside the box and go, you know what? Actually, this kid needs to turn up in their sports uniform, or this kid does it. Do you know what I mean? Could we be a little bit less obsessed with sock height and sports or formal uniforms, and a little bit more concerned about kindness and inclusivity?
I love it. And actually, I just realized I probably haven't mentioned the book is called Out of the Box enough. So I think that's a really good note to finish on, to really encourage people to think out of the box. But no matter whether you're a teacher assistant, early childhood educator, parent, carer, I think this could be a good episode to share with people to really think about how they can be more supportive, no matter what their role is, and what we can do to move forward as a community and have that hope and optimism that Madonna's brought to this conversation.
Yes. Yeah.
It's usually the other way around, Beck. We're the same team.
But I just want to thank both of you for your time and congratulations. I know that anyone who picks up this book is not only going to be like, oh, I can relate to this, but also go away with some little ideas and strategies they can put in place for all ages and stages. And the fact that you really research this book it's a privilege to read it, really. So
That's what happens when you co-author with an investigative journalist. Mate, look out.
All right, so can I say, but Beck kept saying, what are the tips? How are we helping parents? How are we helping we're a good team and we had I'm doing it. And thanks for what you do in this space too, Sue, because everyone we asked, who else should we interview? We probably got a little bit sick of hearing your name. And that's why we're so up.
Sue Larky again.
Oh, you're too kind. Well, that's so funny because I just said to my husband, Andrew, because we work together, I said, I'm a bit nervous about this interview. These girls are like really professional. Like, just see myself as one teacher trying to make a difference. And things like this podcast, I know teachers listen to it driving to school, which, I know that this is just a little bit of inspiration in their earpods each week or whatever, and for families. So that's why I just think what you're doing here really builds what we're trying to do as a community of listeners and readers. So onwards and upwards, I say.
Yes. Thank you. Onwards and upwards.
Thanks, ladies.
Thanks, Sue.
Thanks, Sue.